warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, my name is Mary Fitria. Today I would like to present about the sociolinguistic books by John Edwards. So just keep it watching. Sociolinguistics by John Edwards. Introduction. Language was simply the most basic linchpin of humanity. In both its ordinary communicative role and as the most immediate symbolic marker of human affiliation. Language is preeminently a social phenomenon. The sociology and the social psychology of language are, like sociolinguistics, concerned with the intertwining of language and society. Some have suggested that while the main focus of sociolinguistics is on language variation in different social contexts, the other terms imply an emphasis on behavior and context from a linguistic perspective. Others have argued that sociolinguistics is essentially the study of speakers' language choices. If so, a reciprocity of influence becomes immediately apparent. Context clearly affects such choice. We make different selections from our repertoire when talking to spouses, children, pets, vicars, doctors, friends in the bar, and so on. The second slide are about language, dialect, and accents. First of all, on the meanings of things that reflect in themselves arbitrary choices. There is nothing intrinsic in either the sound table or its representation on the page that conjures up the familiar meaning. It works in English, but not in German or Japanese, where the community has come to assign different sounds and symbols to that same concept. Second, we collectively agree upon certain rules the grammar of the language, which are again entirely arbitrary, with a set of elements, words or component of words, and a system that regulates their combination. There emerges a language capable of more or less infinite creativity. With a little touch, it would be possible for almost all of us to come up with a sentence that has probably never been uttered or written before. A reasonable knowledge of elements plus rules should permit the deciphering of its meaning. As subvarieties under a common language roof, dialects are formally defined as mutually intelligible variants, differing one from another along three dimensions: vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. In some English dialects, speakers brew their tea, others let it mash or sit or step. In others, frying pans become skillets, and milkshake become fraps or perhaps even cabinets. It's logical to assume that every group of speakers has a communication system that works for them with the precision called for in their social circumstances and without ambiguity. It's illogical to think that some groups manage to get by without such a system. Speakers of all dialects then speak correctly. Problem arise because not all communities and dialects have equal social clout. because the linguistic standards of those in power become dominant, and because social dominance in language as elsewhere allows difference to be translated into deficiency. The fourth point are loyalty, maintenance, shift, loss, and revival. The maintenance of a language generally rests upon the continuation of settings in which that language and no other is required. It's the progressive absorption of domains by a new language that charts the course of shift. The emerging patterns are rarely random. Public settings are generally affected earlier than private ones. For example, that is why contemporary scholars have placed so much emphasis on the family, so long as the children learn at their mother's knee. Surely the parental language will continue. Next is language nationalists, activists, and enthusiasts of all stripes also testify to the importance of will, to the strength of commitments, and often these hopes. There are two major and interrelated factors involved in language maintenance efforts, one tangible and one more subjective. The tangible one is the continuation of those domains of necessity just referred to. This is not an easy task. The other involves the collective will to stem this continuity, to sustain linguistic vigor. Given the formidable social, economic, and cultural attraction associated with large languages and their societies, it's not surprising that active moves for language maintenance are usually preserved of only a small number of people. The next point are name, sex, and gender, language, and religion. There are other modern instances of the close connection among language, religion, and identity that are as interesting, if not always as dramatic, as those involving Hebrew. Some show how a strong connection between language and religion can both reinforce and weaken the former. If, for instance, religion is a central pillar if in the culture of a group whose language is at risk, it makes sense to exploit its strength and to suggest that faith is uniquely expressible through the threatened tongue. And next is language and gender. If women's and men's speech reflects status differences, then matters of social convention but also dominance and subordination must be considered. If women are expected to use better forms than men, if they are supposed to be more polite, if their use profanity and obscenity is more severely sanctioned, then it might reasonably be concluded that they are a group whose linguistics and other behavior has limits placed upon it. Men dominate conversation. Men interrupt women more than women do men. And women provide more conversational feedback than men, making more encouraging and facilitating remarks during exchanges. This at least has been the received wisdom. The last is naming ourselves. The study of names, onomestics, is a minor interest within sociolinguistics, even though everyone realizes that names are significant. Contemporary research reveals that people whose names are rare or strange can do less well at school. They are called upon less frequently by teachers, and they may receive lower marks. Studies have also shown that different names attached to the same academic work or employment resume can elicit different assessments. Most parents spend a lot of time thinking about names for their children, and they are right to do so. Okay, I think that's all about my presentation today. I hope you can get the point. Thanks for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.